Hi everyone, this is a course about music production, and the first topic is compression. What's exactly compression? I will play a little part of the song and I will open a compressor so you can see it.
I am what I am. You are what you are. We're tigers in a cage, fighting for space. The earth is still spinning, and rivers flow downstream, but not much is.
All right, this is the song I Am What I Am. It's a funky blues song, and I just muted the sound of the song so you can just concentrate here on the compressor of the drums, one of the 4 compressors involved in compressing the drums. So what is exactly a compressor, or what is compression? It's a way to control the dynamic range of an instrument. That's the first function. Control the dynamic range. So when I go to my drum bus, I'll move this aside a bit. Then, and I open this. This is a level meter. Then you can see that the peak of the drums is on minus 6 dB. And how far does the drum fall back? I think it's about here maybe? Yeah, you see? While the drummer is playing, the sound falls back nearly all the way over here, minus 17 dB, maybe minus 16 dB. So now you know that the dynamic difference is 10 dB. So the instrument is sounding between minus 6 dB and minus 16 dB. That's a dynamic difference of this instrument. And when we go now to the pre-master of the drums, so that's after the compressors, and we open that dynamic range at the level meter again, let's have a look what the dynamic range of the instrument is now. It's that same drum. I think it falls back. You can see some gain is lost. It only goes up until minus 10 dB approximately, and it falls back to minus 19, I think. So that's normal. It's not because you have been compressing about 3 dB that the dynamic range will be reduced by 3 dB. Because you're only compressing the peaks. The compressor is not working constantly. Only if the compressor would constantly take away 3 dB, the dynamic range would be reduced by 3 dB too. So keep in mind that the reduction of the dynamic range doesn't equal the amount of compression you see on the needle of the compressor. Let's focus now on the ratio knob. You can compare the ratio with a ceiling, but the ceiling is not made out of concrete. It's a flexible net. When the ratio is on 1:1, the peaks of your music can push that net up, that ceiling up, and there is no resistance. When you turn the ratio up to 4:1, for example, that flexible ceiling, that flexible net is tightened up a little bit. So when the peaks of your music are pushing against it, they can still push the net up, they can still push that flexible ceiling up, but the net, that flexible ceiling, is also pushing back. And this causes compression. When you turn the ratio knob all the way to 10:1 or 12:1, then that flexible ceiling, that flexible net is tightened up this hard that it's not flexible anymore. your compressor functions then as a brick wall limiter. At the left side, you see the threshold knob. When you lower the threshold, you are lowering the ceiling. So that's the first thing you have to do. You have to lower the ceiling until it reaches the peaks, and then you use the ratio knob, and you can decide now, am I going for a hard ceiling to reach 3 dB of compression, or am I going for a softer, more flexible ceiling? And in that case, you might have to lower the threshold a bit more, lower the ceiling a bit more to reach 3 dB of compression, because your peaks are allowed to push that flexible ceiling up, so there is less pushback. A second function of compression is to alter the sound of an instrument. So this drum sounds quite natural, isn't it? I will turn the music on again.
There's no turning around.
And then I will isolate.
Nope.
These are the drums. Sounds quite natural, should sound natural, because it's jazz and we want that natural sound. The more, and now we're concentrating here, the more I reduce the first compressor, the more controlled the instrument will sound. And this is something you might want when you want a more artificial drum sound, a more computer drum sound. Then you can shorten it, and then it will become more controlled. Why don't you hear it? I just turned this down. You don't hear much difference, is it? Why is that? Because I use 4 different compressors to control the drums. If you change the settings of one, you don't hear it. If you would use only one compressor to control the drums, you would immediately hear that if you turn this down, it would sound less alive. The release button determines how fast that compressor needle comes back. Have a look when I make it higher. You see the needle is now slower. When the needle is slower, it means you are not compressing the same way as you did before. Beforehand, the needle went to 3 and fell all the way back to 0. So every time there was a hit or a kick of the drum, I had 3 dB of compression. But now you can see the needle is moving somewhere between the 3 and the 1. It means there is only 2 dB of compression going on at this right moment. Let me clarify that a bit. So if the needle doesn't fall all the way back, it only falls back to the 1, it means you already start with a compressed sound. The sound is already compressed by 1 dB, and then the needle jumps back up. Does the needle have to fall back all the way? Not especially. When we concentrate for a moment on the vocal, let's turn the vocal on. There it is.
But not much is left of our childhood dreams. If we claw our way out, there's no turning around.
You can see the needle falls back, but not always. Sometimes it's still on its way down when it pops up again. This is a good thing for a vocal. So when a vocal is very busy, when there are no pauses, when the singer is singing, you keep a baseline of compression. So the needle doesn't fall all the way back. You keep that baseline of compression to stabilize the vocal. You will hear it. The vocal is less jumpy. There is more stability to the sound. So it's a good thing. So it depends a bit on the instrument you're using. So basically, that's what a compressor is. It is controlling the dynamic range. I'll show it again with the vocal because there was not much dynamic range difference on the drums, was it, after the compression? So let's have a look here. Let's do it one more time. So this is the vocal. It goes up to -6, and while the vocalist is singing, the needle, the meter falls back to, let's say, sometimes there's a big pause, then the meter just goes to 0 or to minus all the way to the left. So that's not it. Dynamic range is while the singer is singing, what are the soft parts and what are the loudest parts. So while the instrument is going on, I think it's about this, it's about 10 dB here. Okay, let's now have a look at the meter after compression. So this is the pre-master of the vocalist. And let's see. There's a little bit of loss here. It only goes to -7 for the moment. And it's like -15 now. So there was originally 10 dB of dynamic difference, and it's reduced to 8. All right. So that is, in short, what compression is. It's a way to reduce the dynamic range, and it's a way to control the sound or alter the sound of an instrument. Now let's switch to why would you use compression at all? If there is a live performance, there's no compression, is it? That just, I mean, classical music. Of course, the walls of the concert hall are compressing the sound, but in general, it's live. There's no compression going on. So why would you reduce the dynamic range of your instruments using a compressor? The why is that you want to avoid that the listener, he might be listening to your music in his car, or he might be listening to your music in the kitchen through a radio or on an iPad. You want to avoid that this person thinks like, oh, this is a bit soft, let's put it louder. You want to avoid that. Or 30 seconds later, or oh, I put it louder, but that's too loud. Let's put it softer. So you compress it so the listener would not change the volume knob of his device while he's listening. That's the main reason for compression. So he can just sit there, listen to it, and enjoy the soft parts and enjoy the louder parts without changing the volume knob of his device. A second reason why you use compression is to bring the dynamic range of the instruments in correspondence with each other. What do I mean? In an average jazz song, the drums might, for example, this is just an example, have 12 dB dynamic difference. And my drums only had 10, but you'll see it will match. So the drums in this example have 12 dB of dynamic difference, and the vocals have also 12 dB of dynamic difference. And the bass is having 10 dB of dynamic difference, and the acoustic piano 14, and the acoustic guitar 12. By bringing the dynamic range of the instruments in a certain correspondence with each other, they start sounding like a group, like a band, and the vocal will automatically stand out. If the dynamic range of the drums is far too big in correspondence with the lead vocal, you will start listening to the drums instead of the vocal while the music's on. I'm going to switch to another chart, and this is maybe even a better one because we are in the pop genre. This is pop, this is a pop ballad, this is baroque pop, atmospheric pop. And as you can see, when you are mixing pop music, the dynamic range of the drums, of the grouped drums, preferably is between 6 and 8 dB. And the lead vocal is between 8 and 10 dB, so a little bit more dynamic range for the lead vocal. When it's a pop ballad, you can already see there is more dynamic range suddenly. Instead of going between 6 and 8, you go between 8 and 10. So a pop ballad has more dynamic range, so more difference between the louder and the softer parts, because this will emotionalize the listener when there is more dynamic range. Have a look here. The lead vocal is the same thing, 8 and 10 when it's pop. When it's a pop ballad, it's between 10 and 14. So with the compression, you bring a certain balance between the instruments regarding the dynamic range. And then it will sound like a band, and your attention will automatically go to the singer, to the lead singer. How? That's the next part. How are you going to apply compression? There are different kinds of compression. You have, for example, because this is the first type of compression I'm going to talk about, Brauerizing. What's exactly Brauerizing? I'm going to turn off this solo, and I'm going to turn off the mute,
No
and then you can hear it better.
Colors. No gain without love, as I am what I am.
What you're hearing now is this. In bus 3, you can see here, bus 3 and bus 4, there is a compressor. This is bus 3. This is the compressor of bus 3. This is bus 4. And this is the compressor of bus 4. Brauerizing means that you split the sound of your instrument and that you then apply different settings for every compressor. Let's have a look at this again. So the sound goes in bus 3 and goes in bus 4. So there is a split of the drum sound. I make it go in here, and at the same time, there is another copy of the sound that goes into the other bus, bus 4. The first, I'll mute it for a moment. The first compressor, that's this one, is concentrating on the attack of the drum sound. You can see the attack knob is on 10 milliseconds. And the second compressor is concentrating on the sustain of the sound. You can see it's 35 milliseconds before the compressor starts working. The release knob does the same thing. The release knob here is on 150 milliseconds, so still concentrating more on the attack of the sound, and here it's on 190 milliseconds, concentrating more on the sustain or the release of the sound. So every instrument has an attack. That's in this case when the stick hits or the foot kicks, the pedal kicks. So a drum is a very fast attack, a very short sustain, and immediately a release. That's typical for a drum. It's pak. Other instruments have a longer sustain. For example, a piano, you can hit a note with the hammer. Right? The hammer is touching the string. And when you press the sustain pedal of your piano, the note will last for a long time until you release the sustain pedal. So every instrument has its own characteristics. And Brauerizing means that you separate the two compressors. You're not just using one compressor to control the sound of the drums or alter the sound of the drums. No, you're using two and you put them in parallel position. So the sound goes into bus 3 and there is a copy of the sound going into bus 4 and they come together again here in bus 27. That's where they come together. How do I know they come together in bus 27? Because this is bus 3, this is the compressor, and the exit is going to bus 27. The same for the next compressor. It's in bus 4, this compressor, and it goes to bus 27. So I split the sound, one compressor concentrating on the attack, the other compressor concentrating on the sustain of the sound, and I bring them together again. When I started, I showed you that on the level meter, the sound goes up all the way to minus 6 dB. If you split the sound into two, you have more sound, isn't it? It's like you turn one glass of water into 2 glasses of water, and then you have to pour those 2 glasses of water back into this one glass, because you bring those 2 glasses together in one. That's why I reduce here on the fader the volume. So if I put the level meter on, you will see it also goes to minus 6 dB. If I would keep the volume of those compressors, bus 3 on 0, and here 2 on 0, you see it goes too high up. I have no headroom left. I like minus 6 dB of headroom over here. There's a reason for that. Those compressors, those plugins, are made to have minus 6 dB of volume going through them. So they give their best performance if minus 6 dB goes into them. So that's what I do. I make minus 6 dB go into compressor 3. I made a minus 6 dB copy going into compressor number in bus number 4. And when I bring them together, beforehand, I put the fader a bit down. It was on minus 5, I think. And then I check if I get minus 6 dB again. So that's Brauerizing. Brauerizing means you split your sound. I already told you I have 4 compressors controlling the sound of the drums. So this is the first. This is the dry sound. But what else did I do? I created a lot of buses. Here you can see them. And there are delays in those buses, or there's reverb in those buses. And I make, we also call this the wet sound. And these wet sounds come together in one bus. So I bring all these glasses of water. Every time you open a bus, it's like you add a glass of volume, a glass of water. I bring them together here in bus 28. And then I do the same thing. This is my wet sound. I'll take away the dry sound. You have to listen carefully now, isn't it? This is the wet sound. This is what gives room, space to the drums. So if you say like, oh, that drum didn't sound dry at all, it seemed it had some space. This is all that's added to that dry sound. So if you add what you hear now to this, you have a drum that seems to be playing in a room. So I have a lot of reverb and delays. I bring them back here. I make sure that all those reverbs and delays together don't go much higher than minus 6 dB. They do a little bit, but not that much. But you can see how many faders I got here, and I had to bring them in a certain balance to each other. I mixed them, and I made sure that the total volume of that mix came down to minus -4.8 and -2.9. I'm still not clipping. If you go over the 0, it's clipping. And then I do the Brauerized split, because we're talking about compression, about Brauerizing. I split this wet sound into a compressor in bus 5 and into a compressor in bus 6. The compressor of bus 5 is concentrating. You can't see it because the knobs are not here in the classic VCA. Let's choose another one for a moment. Now you can see it. So the wet sound has a compressor concentrating on the attack, 12 milliseconds, 350 milliseconds release, and one concentrating on the release, 44 milliseconds and 440 milliseconds for the release knob. So you can see that again, I control the attack of the wet sound and the release of the wet sound with two different compressors, because they are in a parallel setting. The sound goes into this one, and a copy of the sound of the wet sound goes into bus 6, and then they come together over here. And I already turned the faders a bit down. If everything is all right here, have a look. We have, it's still not clipping. We have -4.6 dB. There's still a bit of headroom left before the sound starts clipping. It doesn't go over 0. So Brauerizing means that, I will open now a chart for you, that you split your sound into dry 1. This is the attack setting. This is the setting for the release knob. This is the setting for the ratio. And you see that's the amount of dB you're going to compress. So I chose 3 dB and 2 dB, and I chose 3 dB again and 2 dB again. And I chose the most loose settings. It's I like it to sound as natural as possible, so I took it's a range. You can choose 4 to between 2 to 10. Another aspect of Brauerizing is that you always choose a different type of compressor. Did you see that when you open the compressor? It looks like one plugin. It's called compressor. But when you open it, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 types of compressors in it. You see that? They're all different. And they all create a different kind of sound. So what you're in fact doing is splitting your sound into 4, and you change the color of the sound 4 times. So you have the studio VCA, you have here the vintage opto is used, the classic VCA and the vintage fed. Have a look for a moment when I switch. You can see the vintage opto. It's mostly used to control the sustain. The vintage opto will hardly be used to control the attack of a sound. Why? Because it's a little bit slower. It's like it needs time to get up. The studio fed, for example, it's a very aggressive one. Look at that. It compresses a lot more, so you will have adapted threshold to have that same. If you only want to have it going up 2 dB, the moment I put it on studio fed, I have to bring up the threshold, or the sound will not be the same. Or the effect of the compressor will not be the same. Classic VCA is a compressor. Look at that. It also needs a threshold that's a bit lower to have that 2 dB of compression. All right. So the first type of compression is Brauerizing, and you do it with all your instruments. You split the sound of your bass into a dry 1, controlling the attack of the dry sound, a dry 2, controlling the release or focusing on the release of that bass sound, and then you add reverb, you add delays, and you bring them together in a bus, and then you split the sound again, and it's called the wet sound, and you split it into a compressor controlling the attack of that wet sound and a compressor controlling the release of that wet sound. And then you bring all of this together in what's called your pre-master. And your pre-master is where the solo treatment of your instrument ends. That's what I call the pre-master. Normally the pre-master is the last step before it goes into the stereo output, the master, the final exit. But I didn't do that. I have some, the sound goes through one more door or bus. You can see bus 240 before it goes to the exit to stereo out. But the pre-master is the end of the solo treatment of the instrument. What if you're not satisfied? What if the dynamic range of this instrument is still bothering you? Listen. What if you say, for me, these drums are too vivid. My attention still goes to the drum. I want to reduce the dynamic range a bit more. In that case, you can put, and that's the second type of compression, you can put two compressors in serial with each other. Let's have a look. I'm turning on now two compressors that were not on before. That first compressor, I will make it concentrate on the attack of the sound. But this time I will use the settings here on the left, the hardest settings. So the first compressor has an attack time of 4 milliseconds. The second knob, the release knob, is on 70. And I make it compress a little bit. So all sound, those 4, the dry 1, dry 2, wet 1 and wet 2 now goes into this compressor because it's the pre-master, that's where all the sound comes together of the drums. And then I put another compressor behind it, and this one has this settings, attack time 20 or 90 milliseconds and 140, so it's nearly these settings. This is called compressing in serial. It means the sound goes through this first compressor and then the result of that goes into the second compressor. Mostly you put, let's mute that for a moment. I'll just turn it off. Mostly you only use, no, I will not turn it off, because then the meters will not move anymore. So I turn the song back on, and now we can see it. So what would be a good reason to put compressors in serial? Mostly it's because you want to help the second compressor. To make this compressor work less hard, we put this one in front of it, and we already control the attack a bit, so this compressor is not bothered too much by the attack of the instrument. If I turn the first one off, look, the first one is off now, the second one's still on, then this compressor suddenly has a lot more work to do on its own. And we make now this compressor concentrate on the attack, and this one more on the release, and this one has to work a bit less hard. So if you ever see in my template two plugins in serial, so behind each other, 1, 2, it's because I want to help the second plugin to work less hard or whatever. So the first one is a helper, and the second one to help the second one. So that's serial compression. So if you're not satisfied with your Brauerized setup, then you have a Brauerized setup where you split the sound into dry and wet, and that dry sound is even split into two compressors. Wet sound is split into compressors. You also have the coloration. You have all these compressors adding their own color to the sound, and then you bring it all together. And if you're still not satisfied because the drum has still too much dynamic range in comparison to the vocal or to the other instruments, and because it's a balance, I showed you that, there is something like a dynamic range chart that you have to bring the instruments, the dynamic range of the instruments in comparison to each other. If you're not satisfied, you can always add some compressors in serial to control the sound more. Let's have a look. What else is on it? I got parallel compression, Michael Brauer. Serial compression, indeed. Before I go on, let's talk a bit now on... It's a good moment to do it. What if you're still not satisfied? So, what if at this right moment you think, that drum is still too vivid for me. Are you going to compress it more? Are you going to turn up? So now it's compressing harder, isn't it? Look at that. I can even add higher, make the ratio higher. I keep pulling it up. But now listen to the drums. They don't sound alive anymore. Moreover, they sound very muted. You don't want that. So what if you turn on these serial compressors and you're still not satisfied? The dynamic range of the drums is still too big. Are you then going to compress more? No, because then the drums will start to sound unnatural, and that's where you stop compressing. The only thing you can still do now is have a look. I did it because the vocalist is kind of an intimate vocalist. There's not that much dynamic range going on when he sings. So what did I do? I rewrote the volume line of the drums. Do you see that? If I enlarge it, you can see that every time the singer is singing, I pull the volume line down a few dB and I bring it back up every time when he's not singing. Let's turn on again.
No freedom without cuts. No gain without.
Let's have a look at that volume line.
I am what I am. You are what you are.
It comes up. They sing, I bring it up. They sing, I bring it up.
The earth is still spinning.
So I had a look at the volume meter and I thought like, okay, that drum is still a little bit too dynamic for me. And instead of turning those serial compressors on, I decided to use this other technique, and that's that you put your, here this selection was on read, but you put it on touch. Now I can, if I move this fader, it will rewrite the volume. Let's do this for a moment so you know how to do it. So I press play.
I am what I am.
And now I pull it down. I exaggerate a bit. And I pull it down and I bring it up. I pull it down, I bring it up. He's singing, I bring it up. He's singing, he stops singing. Do you see what I did? I exaggerated now that volume line, rewriting that volume line. So how do you know how much you have to rewrite that volume line? How much you have to pull that fader down? It's easy. You look at your level meter and you compare it to the level meter of the vocal. So I wanted, I think this drummer had about 10 dB of a dynamic range, and the vocalist had about 10 dB of dynamic range too. It was about that. And I want to bring the dynamic range of the drummer, I want to make it a bit smaller than the vocalist. It's a choice of mine. It's just something you decide by ear. Hey? So you already have your dynamic range chart. Oh, this is me, and that's my recording. You already have your chart that gives you an idea on how to balance the dynamic range of all the instruments in comparison to each other. And then if you're not satisfied, you can put compressors in serial on, or you can, for example, rewrite the volume line of your... You have to put it back on read later, or everything you will do here will be registered, will be saved. So you put it back on read, and now this variation in the volume line is saved. And every time the vocalist sings, the drum volume is pulled back.
What you want. We're tigers in a cage, fighting.
It's a bit too much for me. I preferred the smaller pullbacks in the volume. All right. What else is there? So I will put it back the way it was. What else is there? Have a look here. Normally, when we talk about parallel compression, people don't think, oh, you mean Michael Brauer, Brauerizing, splitting up the sound. No, when we talk about parallel compression, most people think about this. You open a bus, so you'll see that there is a certain bus 7 here. I open the bus, so another copy of the sound, and let's see what's happening in there. I put a compressor in it. Look at that. This compressor is working pretty hard, isn't it? What is this? Look at the attack time. 7 milliseconds, 100 milliseconds of release. The ratio is on 10. Do you remember what that means? When it comes to ratio, you have to imagine yourself a ceiling made out of a flexible net. When the ratio is low, the peaks are pushing against that net, and that net is only pushing back to a certain degree. So and when the ratio is high, like in this case 10:1, that ceiling is not flexible anymore. The net is totally tightened up. It's as hard as concrete. So this compressor functions as a brick wall limiter. It pushes all the peaks 100% back. It cuts them off. There's no flexibility. So the threshold knob is there to lower the ceiling, and the ratio knob is there to determine if you want a flexible ceiling with a certain amount of pushback or a hard ceiling with a 100% pushback. Let me solo that compressor. Oh, you can't hear it. So let's turn it up. Sounds like this. But as you can see, it's only mixed in. Can you actually hear it? Let's put it a bit harder. Now you can hear it. So, what is this exactly? You could call it, this kind of parallel compression is called New York compression. This kind of compression is what we call under compression, or the way it's a way to look at it. When you squash the sound, you totally squash it. Let's listen to it again. When you totally squash a sound, everything is nearly as loud. That means that the soft parts of the drums and the loud part of the drums are indistinguishable from each other, because the soft parts, the sound is so squashed by the compressor that everything sounds on the same volume, or nearly on the same volume. This has the effect that the soft parts are a little bit lifted up when you mix it in. So let's see, so if you have drums, you might have very high peaks. It goes up loud, 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 and then there is some soft element in it. The moment you bring those peaks down, you compress them down, 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 then they are as high as the soft ones. The high peaks are reduced to the same level as the soft sound you had here. So this means that in comparison, the soft sound sounds now louder than it did before. So this is a way to lift up the soft elements in your mix. You might not hear it very well here, because this is the drums. Let's take an instrument like the vocal, because a vocal has more fluctuation. On these low notes where he falls away a bit. So let's...
No freedom without cost, no gain without loss.
So when you listen to this, it sounds very controlled, isn't it?
We're tigers in a cage.
Because everything sounds as loud. What's soft, what sounds as loud now as the louder parts in the vocal. When you add this New York compression to your sound, it makes the sound a bit thicker. Listen to it. If I can...
You are what you want. We're tigers in a cage.
So when I add it,
fighting for space,
it becomes thicker.
The earth is still spinning,
a bit more stable, but also thicker.
Flow downstream,
so I just added a little bit. Like
of our childhood dreams.
So I just add a little bit of it. I put it on a level that, when you listen very carefully, that it's there. This way, it brings up the softer parts of your vocal, so the vocal will sound more controlled. But I don't like the thickening that much, so I just add a little bit into it. But it has an influence. If every instrument has its own New York compression, and it has, as you can see, I have it for every instrument, the sound thickens up a bit, and the instrument is a little bit more even. The softer parts are lifted up, so there is less, you can hear everything better.
I am what I am. You are what you are. We're tigers in a cage.
All right.
Fighting.
We already talked about Brauerizing. That's a parallel setup. We talked about serial compression. We talked about New York compression. Let's now have a look at a compressor that concentrates on the crest of the sound. So as you can see, this is my pre-master of the drums. This is where all the sound of the Brauerized compression comes together. These are the serial compressors that are turned off because I preferred rewriting the volume line instead. And then there is one more compressor here, you see it. Let's have a look. The attack time is on 0 and the release time is on 5 milliseconds. Oh, good heavens. What is this compressor doing then? And the ratio is on 20:1. That means that the ceiling is totally hardened up. So when peaks bounce against that ceiling, the ceiling is not flexible at all. They're cut off. So it's called a brick wall limiter. I turned this compressor into a brick wall limiter. You see that it sometimes goes up. Not always, sometimes.
The earth is still spinning.
What's crest exactly? So this compressor is concentrating on the crest of the sound. We already had, let me open it again, that Michael Brauer chart, isn't it? And as you can see, the shortest setting was 4. There was nothing less than 4. This is the first compressor where the attack time, the A stands for attack, is set on 0. And the release times were always like 70, 150, 250, 300. And this release time is 5. So the release time is nearly before one of the other compressors might start to kick in. In my case, the first compressor was on 10 milliseconds. The second one had an attack time of 35. So this compressor is really acting from 0 to 5 milliseconds, and the next compressor only sets in at 10 milliseconds. So what is it doing? Because you can see it's working. It is working, isn't it? You can see it's doing something. Every time a stick hits the snare, every time a foot or the pedal hits the kick drum, there are transients, and they're very high transients, just when the kick happens, just when the hit happens. So all the other compressors are concentrating on the attack of the sound, but not on the initial transients, the crest transients. And you will see, if you don't control the crest transients, it's not changing the sound very much. Let me show you that first. Let me move it up. Drum still sounds like the drum. So if you just take away the first 5 milliseconds of a drum, because I'm suppressing the first 5 milliseconds of a drum sound now, and you compress it, the drum still sounds like itself. So knowing that the sound of the drum is not influenced that much by it, why not take away a little bit those peaks then? In the end, it will help you, because all sound, the drums, the bass, and so on, it will all come together in the master. And if you don't control those peaks, those crest peaks, there will be a limiter here. I can already show you that limiter. And if you turn off all the crest compressors, you see it's not limiting. It's just gaining up the track, making it louder. That's what I want. I want when all the sound comes together on the master, I want to push up the volume, and I don't want to have those transients avoiding me doing that. So you have parallel compression Brauerizing. It's kind of splitting up the sound into different compressors, bringing it back together. You have parallel compression New York style, to kind of under compression to bring the softer parts up in your mix. You have now that crest compressor concentrating on the crest of the sound, the initial transients that happen before all the other compressors start working. And let's check for a moment if there is another one I want to talk about. Bus compressor, indeed. Okay, let's have a look at the bus compressor. Lots of music might benefit or benefits. This is jazz music, so I didn't feel it was necessary. Let's have a look. This is the pre-master of the bass, but instead of going immediately to the exit, I go first through bus 240. And here, the drums, they also go to bus 240. I bring them together in one bus before they go to the stereo out. You could wonder, like, why would you bring the drums and the bass together in one bus? Let do it for a moment. Okay, you have a compressor. It's not working very hard. The ratio is 1:8. So, and you can see it's only working a little bit. What is this compressor doing now at this moment? It's gluing the bass and the drums together. I can put it maybe on 2 dB. Imagine yourself, to make it more clear, a pipe. And the drum is crawling through it, and the bass is crawling through that pipe at the same moment. Every time the drums want to inflate them, is playing harder, so wants to fill the whole pipe, the bass is there too, so it cannot fill the whole pipe, and that's when the compressors start working. Every time the bass has a peak and wants to fill that whole pipe, it's not possible because the drum is there too. They're crawling through that pipe. They're going through that pipe together at the same time. So they're balancing each other volume out. And the bass is a low instrument. And the drums, well, the kick is low. So the kick in this case and the bass are kind of suppressing each other, compressing each other. You can see that I did this with all the other instruments too. I made the piano go into a certain bus, and I think I added originally the backing vocals into that bus too. So when you are going to use bus compression, you have to bring together instruments that are of the same range. What do I mean by that? So the kick of the drum and the bass of the drum are both low. So if you bring them together, they can balance each other out before you go to the master, before you go to the real exit, where all sound comes together. A piano, the left hand of the piano has the same height as the male voice. The right hand of the piano has approximately the same height as the girl's voice. And the girl's voice is considered a backing vocal, a singing along vocal. So normally, if I would use bus compression, I didn't do it, I would bring the piano and that girl together in this bus and then compress them a little bit together. What about the guitar? There is a guitar here. Well, a guitar, you can bring a guitar together in a bus with, for example, strings. If you got strings, the guitar and the strings might match. A cello, for example, matches with the height of the guitar. The male voice also matches with the height of the guitar. So if my background singer would be a male, I might bring it together with the guitar instead of the piano. This is also something that was done by Michael Brauer. So this is an interesting man because he invented that parallel split that I showed you. That's the first subject I had, that you have two compressors in parallel, one concentrating on the attack, the other one concentrating on the sustain of the sound. And he is also the one that said, I want to glue together the instruments with the same, approximate the same frequencies into a bus before they go to the stereo out. Why would he do that? The same reason. He wants the compressor on the master or the limiter on the master to work less hard. Imagine you don't do it. I didn't do it, but this music is not very hard compressed, it's jazz. If you want to create pop or EDM music, you might compress your music a bit harder. So it might be good to compress first, give the instruments a solo treatment, and then bring the bass and the drums together in a bus, compress them a bit more so they balance each other out before they reach each other, before that sound reaches the master. Why? There is a good reason for that. I think I can show it to you. If you don't use bus compression, then I'm not sure if I can show it because this music is already balanced. But normally the kick, if you have a very hard kick and you didn't control it beforehand, then every time the singer sings something, it will suppress the vocal. So if you turn on any compressor here on the master, that's also a gluing compressor. You can see every time the vocal sings, it goes up. So it's a good mix. The vocal is dominant and it's kind of, it's a little bit compressed by the other instruments now, but the vocal is also compressing the other instruments. They all are going through the same pipe now. So why didn't I do the Brauerizing idea of bringing instruments with the same frequency together in a bus to balance each other out, to balance these frequencies out, to balance, you bring the kick, the drum and the bass together in one bus because you want the low to balance each other out. If there is a very loud bass peak and a very loud kick peak of the drums, you want to even it out before it reaches the master. And I didn't need it because there is not that much compression on, there is a lot of dynamics left here. So that's why I didn't use it. But that's called bus compression. And it also has the effect to glue the instruments together. They will sound more like one band. So if you have the idea like, oh, my music falls apart a bit, you can use those bus compressors to reach that effect. Okay, 2 compressors left. Sidechain compressor. You could wonder like, what on earth is a sidechain compressor and what is it needed for? If you listen to this song, you can hear that the vocal is on top. You never have to search for the vocal. Your ear automatically detects the vocal. Listen to it again.
I am what I am. You are what you are.
You have a piano, a guitar, a bass and a drum, but your ear doesn't have to search for the vocal. How did I achieve that? I made the sound of the guitar and the piano come together in a certain bus. And then I added 4 buses. I split the sound up into 4. You don't have to do this split, but I did it. I like to colorize the sound. And what's in those buses? So the piano and the guitar are in here. The drum and the bass are not in here. So what is sidechain compressor? Compressing. It's a compressor that is linked to the vocal. So I linked it, you can see it here, the word sidechain. I linked this compressor to bus 177. That's where my vocal is. And every time the vocal sings, it compresses the sound. So the sound of the guitar and the piano are compressed 2 dB and the ratio on 3.5. So that's originally 2 times 3.5 dB that is reduced to 2 dB. That side compression, you suppress the piano and you suppress the volume of the guitar every time the vocal sings, so the vocal can pop up. Why not the bass and why not the drums? Because the piano and the guitar are the instruments that are the most, that have frequencies that are the most in the way of the vocal. And the reason I don't bring, for example, the drums in is because the kick of the drum gives stability to the song, and the bass too. It's a drum and bass. It's your foundation. It makes your foot tap. So I don't want every time the singer sings that the bass and the drums fall away in volume. So they go on. They're not the bass is not in the way of the vocal. The bass is lower. So, and have a look now. Why did I split up? I don't just use one side compressor. I use 4 of them. I did a split of the sound, and then I bring the sound back together. The sound of the guitar, and let's do it like this so you can hear it. So these instruments, piano and a resonator guitar, are side compressed by this compressor. They are side compressed by this compressor. They are side compressed by this compressor, and they are side compressed by this compressor. Have a look now. Why did I do the split? A side compressor brings down the volume of your piano and your guitar, of instruments that have frequencies that might be in the way of the singer. And I don't want the dip to be just like, oh, he sings, dip, go up again. He sings again, dip, go up again. Because then you might hear it. You can hear the side compressor working. You can hear that the volume is always going away and coming back. But if you split the sound into 4, and the attack time of the first side compressor is 15 milliseconds, and the other one is 74 milliseconds, and the other one is 7.5, and this one is like 23. You can see they all have different attack and release times. This way, I make a little hole, but it's a little bit more unpredictable, depending on how much. It's like I wanted a hole that starts a little bit and then becomes slowly deeper and deeper, not just one compressor going jack, jack. And of course, I also like that those 4 compressors each have their own characteristic sound. And what they do is colorize the sound of the piano and the guitar. So when it comes together, the sound is enriched. And at the same time, the volume is reduced every time the singer sings. That's side compression. Is there something more to say about it? Yes, there is. I said the vocal is in bus 177. Well, a vocal is never in a bus. So what do I mean by that? So when you drag in your vocal or you record your vocal, it's just on a track. And this track has no real name. It's not a bus. But here is bus 177. Do you say it? Bus 177? This one. So the sidechain compressor is linked to bus 177. What is exactly in bus 177? Let's listen.
I am what I am.
What you hear is the dry compressed sound. So the sound of the vocal goes through compression number 1, compressor number 2,
The earth is still spinning,
and then comes together here.
Rivers flow downstream.
So the guitar and the piano sound is linked to a compressed sound of the vocal. Why did I do that? Why didn't I just link it here to Eric lead vocal? I could do that. Look, I can change it. I can go here, find Eric lead vocal. He will be in here somewhere. Let's see, where is he? Here. The moment I click this, the sidechain compressor is linked now to the uncompressed vocal. This means that the sidechain compressor is a little bit more unstable because this vocal has had no treatment at all. It might, when there is a peak in the vocal, it might jump up more. And I don't want that because a sidechain compressor is a bit weird somehow. What do I mean by that? Every time the vocal sings louder, the volume of the piano and the guitar are reduced more than when the vocal sings softly. That's a bit weird, isn't it? I would prefer a sidechain compressor doing the opposite. When he sings softly, the music should be suppressed a bit more, isn't it? Because I can't hear the vocal. But that's not what it's doing. Every time the vocal sings louder, and you can actually hear it, then the volume of the piano and the guitar is compressed. So I link my sidechain compressor to an already compressed sound of the vocal, where the soft parts and the loud parts of the vocal are already brought together a bit more. So this sidechain compressor will also react when the vocal sings softly. All right. Is this the last element? We talked about Brauerizing. That's a parallel compressing. We also talked about another way of parallel compressing. It's that you add it, or it's called New York compressing, to bring up the softer parts of your vocal into the mix. We talked about that you can use some, let's say here, serial compressors. So one compressor, another compressor. If you're not going to use the serial compressor, you could just rewrite the volume line. There is another reason why you should rewrite your volume lines anyhow. So even if you're not using extra serial pressing, there's another reason why it's a very good idea to rewrite the volume lines of all your instruments. I did it. If you look at my mix, you will see all the volume lines are rewritten on the pre-master. That's where the solo treatment of an instrument ends. So why would I do this? Why would I rewrite the volume line of every instrument? After all the instruments are compressed, so when you reach the pre-master of the drums have undergone treatment, compression treatment, it sounds a little bit more controlled. It's like the drums are now like floating. If it's water, the drums are floating here. The moment I compress the bass too, the bass is also floating somewhere here. But what if the volume of the bass is a little bit louder than the volume of the drums? The drums will never be able to go over the volume of the bass because the bass is compressed and I put it here on this volume, and the drums are compressed and I turned the volume a little bit softer so they are here forever. So they don't interact anymore. The volume lines don't interact anymore because they are compressed volume lines. By redrawing the volume line of your drums, you have a chance to bring up the volume. For example, when there is a fill, you can push up the volume line over the volume line of your bass and bring it back under it. And you can push it back up over the volume line of your bass. The bass, the same thing. The bass, when you don't think like, oh, the bass is a bit loud now, you can make it go under the drums and bring it back up. Mostly, I redraw these volume lines with the vocal on. So I put the vocal on and I make sure that the drums sound under the vocal. So the first thing you do, let's turn it off, is you turn the vocal on.
I am what
there
I
it is.
am. You are what you want.
What I do now is I'm going to rewrite the volume first of the most important instrument.
The earth is still spinning,
That's this one.
and rivers flow downstream.
Why? Because it's always on.
But
You see that my
not
guitar is
much
always
is left
playing. My
of
drum
a
is not always playing,
childhood dream.
and my bass is not
If we
always playing,
plow
and my
our
piano
way
is not
out,
always playing. So the
there's no
guitar
turning
is the
around. No freedom
second most
without
instrument.
colors.
So you have the lead singer, and then this
gain
instrument is the most
without
important one.
laws.
So I will
am what I am.
reshape the volume line so the guitar and the singer sound well
With
together.
tigers
When this
in a
is done,
cage,
I'll have a look like,
fighting
maybe
for
I'll
space.
do the piano
The
now.
earth
So
is
I
still
rewrite the
spinning,
volume of the piano.
and rivers flow downstream, but not
I did it here.
much is left of our childhood dream.
And then
If we claw
you might
our way
want to
out,
rewrite the volume
there's
of
no
your bass
turning around.
and of your
No
drums.
No gain without laws. I am what I am.
The template starts to sound a bit weird because I changed already so many settings. So let's open it again. So you have Brauerized parallel compression, New York compression, serial compression, a compressor that's concentrating on the crest of your sound. You have side compression, so you bring the instruments that are not bass and drums together the instruments that have frequencies that might be in the way of your vocal, together in a bus, and you use side compression to suppress the volume of those instruments. And then you're sure the vocal is on top. Is everything said now about compression? Nope, it's not. Let's have a look. You still have a de-esser. What's a de-esser? It's basically only used on a vocal. I use it only on a vocal. What you see is that there is a certain frequency. It's above the body of the sound. Above the body of the sound, you have harmonics. And some of those harmonics, like here around 8,000 hertz, produce the S every time the singer sings an S or a wet T. It produces a lot of energy. Why is that? It's because I compressed the sound. The S was not that loud and the T's were not that loud. But the moment you start compressing a sound, the soft parts become louder. And you know why now. If you have, this is your vocal, and these are your S's and your T's. If I start reducing these peaks, I bring them down, 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 then in comparison, the S and the T's start to sound louder. So what did I do? The maximum reduction is 3.5 dB. So every time there is an S or a T,
I am what I am.
That
You are what you want.
What you are, did you see it?
We're tigers,
Tigers.
in a cage, fighting
Cage.
for space.
Space, you see it?
The earth
And the maximum is
still
3.5
spinning,
dB.
and rivers
I have a
flow
second one
downstream,
here,
but not
a little bit more
much
down the
is
line.
left of our childhood
And this concentrates on another frequency.
If we claw our way out, there's no turning around.
This one is more active,
No
you see that?
freedom without
Because the
color.
S's and the T's are in
No
fact
gain
more of a male
without
vocalist, and not a female
love.
vocalist,
I am what I
are
am.
more centered around this frequency.
You are what you want.
So why did I put this
We're
one
tigers in a
first
cage,
and then this one?
fighting
There is no
for
real
space.
reason. You can switch it
The
around.
earth is still
I put
spinning,
the de-esser
and rivers
focusing
flow
on the
downstream,
highest frequency
but
range
not much
first,
is left
followed
of our
by the
childhood
de-esser
dreams.
focusing
If we
on
claw
that
our way
lower
out,
frequency
There's
range.
no
It's a choice.
turning
It's up to you.
around. No freedom without colors.
Don't
No
reduce more. You can put it there.
without
Like now it would.
laws. I am what
It's
I
going to
am.
reduce all the way to
You
10 dB
are
max.
what you want.
So you see, this
We're
was not that
tigers
loud.
in a
But it
cage,
goes to -6, isn't it?
Fighting for space.
Why do I not
The
reduce
earth is still spinning,
6 dB?
and rivers flow
Why did I
downstream,
stop at 3.5
but
dB?
not much is left
It's because
of our
your
childhood dreams.
consonants give rhythm, punch to your sound. If I sing, you are what you are, you don't feel the song very much, isn't it? You will not tap your foot. You need, I am what I am. You are what you are. So you need the consonants to feel the rhythm. So don't reduce the volume of those consonants too much. Don't do it. Or your music will not dance. It will not move you the same way it did. Let's see if I still have some time left, because I put a little bit of time left on the recording. Let's see, is everything said about compression now, according to the table of constant? Okay, one more maybe. Tape saturation. Tape saturation is in fact not just a compressor. Tape saturation, I have it here somewhere. Let's look. Tape saturation. Let's go to the drummer again. Tape saturation, vintage tape. There is no plugin in Logic Pro that's called that can do tape saturation. So this is an external This is something I bought separately and I installed in Logic Pro. So I will keep it short because all the other plugins I showed you are in-house plugins. They are already in the program. What is it doing?
I am what I am. You are
This drive, when you pull it up,
with tigers in a cage,
is
fighting for
creating a certain distortion on the harmonics. So you have the body of the sound, and then you have all kinds of harmonics sounding here, and they also have their peaks. And it's kind of distorting those peaks. And it gives a warm feeling to the sound. So what did I do? I added bus 26. I put some vintage tape in it, and I made it go to the wet compressors, I think, or is it going to... Yeah, it goes to the wet sound. It's mixed in with the wet sound. So it's mixed in with the reverb, in my case, and with the delays who come together in the wet sound before the Brauerized wet compression happens. So that's tape saturation. Tape saturation, you can also use it on your pre-master. So I used a little bit of tape saturation here too on the pre-master of every instrument. And when I bring the instruments together in the master, so that's a final exit, you will see also tape saturation with a little bit of drive on it. And that drive is distorting the harmonics, and a distorted sound sounds compressed. So that's why tape saturation functions as a compressor. But it's more than that. Tape saturation also EQs the sound. So there might be less high end, or the high end might sound a bit blurred. It might sound softer, and the mid-range might sound a bit pushed. Let's circle back to crest. It helps to reduce the crest. We talked about, we have a crest compressor too, and it helps to reduce that crest, those high peaks that appear in the first 5 milliseconds of a sound. Okay, what have I been talking about so far? I started to explain with what compression is, and then I told you why we compress, and then I showed you how to compress, and I showed you all the different types of compression that takes place in a template. So this is a template, you can see it here. A template is a routing system. I route my sound through the program, and on different spots I add a compressor or some compressors, and they all have a different function. All right, that's it. But there is still one thing, one subject we could talk about. How do you know if you compressed your music too much? First of all, of course, you have that dynamic range chart that tells you if you compress the drums, like if you bring the dynamic range of the drums down to 6 dB, and you bring the lead vocal dynamic range down to 6 dB, they're still brought in comparison to each other, but you will have, when you listen to the music, the impression that there is a veil hanging over the music.
I am what I am.
So too much compression gives the impression that there is a cloth hanging over it. Let's compress it here on the master a little bit more.
The earth is still spinning.
Oh, sorry.
Rivers flow downstream, but not much is left of our childhood dreams.
Add a bit more.
If we claw our way out, there's no turning around, no freedom without colors. No gain without
Okay, so I put some compressors on the master. They were not on.
You are what you
Can you hear it?
are.
this sounds not very dynamic anymore. It's as if there is a distance between me and the music. This means there is too much compression used on the treatment of the individual instruments, and when you bring them together in the master, it sounds muted, as if it's behind a wall a bit. Listen to the difference. I turn them off. You feel it? The music comes forward now and sounds more dynamic. You can hear it also when you turn the volume down. So if the music is too much compressed and you bring down the volume, I'm not sure it's possible. I'll do it like that. So if you bring the volume down and you listen, it doesn't sound very alive, is it? Let's now listen. Although it's soft, the volume, it sounds still alive and sparkling. You hear that? This is sparkling. When I turn it on, less sparkling. So, to check if you use too much compression, you turn the volume of your device down and you listen if it still sounds alive or not. That's one of the ways to do it. How do you know if you didn't use enough compression? Like, what's the rule? Is there a rule? There is no rule, so it's personal taste. But if you turn the volume up, I'm going to do it, watch out for your ears a bit. If you turn the volume up, you should do it on your device. I should not do it. You should do it on your device. If you turn the volume of the music up on your device, always louder and louder until it's really too loud, you would never put it on that volume. Just listen to it for a moment. If the vocal falls out of the mix, if the band falls apart, then you didn't use enough compression. The right amount of compression brings the instruments of the group together, makes it sound like a group, and there is still enough energy so you have that spark feeling that, wow, it's happening. Too much compression and you lose it. If you look up the dynamic range values you might expect in a certain genre and you adapt already the solo treatments of your instruments to those dynamic range charts, the chances to overcompress your music are far less. They're far less big. It will not happen. Or it might still happen, but that's why I didn't use the bus compression. You see, there was another type of compression I told you about, and it's bus compression. You bring instruments together in a bus, like the bass and the drums. When I turn those compressors on, I have the feeling the sparkle of the music is gone, probably because it's jazz music. So I didn't do any bus gluing compression, and because it already sounds well enough as a band, isn't it? This is the start of the song. Just with the guitar. When I listen to it, sounds okay to me. Sounds alive. Sounds close in my face forward. There's some space around it. So it's not over compressed. You could say it's maybe a little bit under compressed, but for the genre, it's quite okay, I think. And this, I think, the end. Here. So I think it sparkles enough, and my feet is tapping, and the song speaks to me. So that's something I had to add. How do you know you use too much compression or not enough compression? There are ways to hear it. And all right, that's it then.